Thank you, Hannah. In regards to what we'll cover today, we'll do introductions of the GCF staff who's here to support this RFP cycle. In addition, we would go into the nuts and bolts of boots on the ground and what the request for a proposal is seeking to accomplish, how to apply, and then we'll leave room at the end of the conversation for Q&A if you so choose to come off mute and ask your question to us directly. But with that, please allow me to jump in. Please meet your boots on the ground team from the Greater Cincinnati Foundation. I am Addison Nelson. I'm the Senior Director of Community Strategies here at the Greater Cincinnati Foundation, and I am partnered with Hannah Hilditch. She is the Community Investments Coordinator for GCF, and she'll be on point at the end of the conversation to describe exactly how to apply if you face any technical difficulties, how to overcome those, as well as we have with us today Kristen Riepenhoff-Zelenskis, who is the program officer who's also supporting this initiative. So she is a resource as it relates to what do you mean by asset-based framing and community voice and things of that nature. So thank you first and foremost to Kristen and Hannah for joining with me in this RFP cycle. So again, today we're here to discuss Boots on the Ground, a partnership between the City of Cincinnati, the Greater Cincinnati Foundation, and other generous donors. And the purpose of this conversation today is not quote unquote grant writing, but more so how to actually successfully submit your application for this process and what is all required in order to submit a completed application for consideration. So with that, let's jump right in. So again, the overview of Boots on the Ground for those who may be new to the initiative, it is a partnership that's led by the City of Cincinnati, the Greater Cincinnati Foundation, and other generous donors. And ultimately, we seek to strengthen the capacity of small community-based or grassroots organizations who's driving change in the City of Cincinnati. So I'm going to take a moment here to pause on the importance of talking about Cincinnati proper. So the majority of the resources that are fueling this RFP comes from city dollars. So therefore, there are opportunities, small opportunities for those who perhaps reach outside of Cincinnati proper, so the 52 neighborhoods. But just wanted to emphasize that in small or grassroots community-based organizations, we're defining that by having an operating budget of less than $1 million to be considered. So again, you must operate or impact change within the city limits, and your operating budget must be less than $1 million. So looking at how much and resources is currently available. So we have to date $750,000, which will allow for us to distribute up to $25,000 max for resources. And so we anticipate no less than 30 grants being awarded. So in the past 2 years, we have awarded 31 organizations grants when we distributed $610,000. Last year, so calendar year 2024, we distributed 41 grants and we poured $834,000 into our community. So again, this is our launch pad. This is our starting point. But as some of you may be aware, Boots on the Ground has quite a bit of momentum in our community. And so other generous supporters will perhaps come in and increase the available dollars. But again, the one thing that remains constant is that the maximum grant size is up to $25,000. But we do encourage organizations to submit what they need. So if you only need $10,000, it is taken seriously and will be considered. So with that, I will move on to the RFP timeline. So today is our RFP workshop, and today is Thursday, January 16th. But I do want to highlight for those who may not be aware, the RFP was released via email and is available on the GCF website, and that has been as of Monday, January 6th. So the complete PDF outlining the funding focus areas and this timeline and other information is available on the GCF website, and it has been open for about a week and a half. After this workshop, for the next 3 Thursdays, we are actually providing capacity building workshops for nonprofits here at the Greater Cincinnati offices located in downtown. So our first workshop, I'm going to go to my next slide, is our governance and compliance workshop, and that's held Thursday, so next Thursday, January 23rd, at the same time, 1 p.m. in person. And we're featuring the president and CEO of Pro Bono Partnership of Ohio. And that is essentially a conglomerate of volunteer attorneys who help organizations set up their 501c3s and properly, legally, and make sure that they're in compliance with state and local government requirements. And so this workshop is pretty much not only how to be in compliance, but the importance of a governing board and who has which responsibilities on that board, and et cetera. And they will actually provide a checklist so that you all, as leaders for your respective 501c3s, will be able to identify perhaps any gaps, or, hey, maybe you are 100% good and ready to go. One thing that I would emphasize is that Pro Bono does offer counseling or consulting hours for nonprofits, and I would encourage you to attend the workshop. Again, it's in person here at the Greater Cincinnati Foundation, as well as build a relationship with Pro Bono. So we're very happy that Aaron Childs has agreed to come in and serve in that capacity. The following Thursday, again, we're keeping this pattern of Thursdays at 1 p.m. here in person at the Greater Cincinnati Foundation. We know that it takes resources for these organizations to thrive in our community. That's why we're providing dollars, and we want to provide capacity building to help you as leaders build financial resources for your organization. So we're bringing in a veteran fundraiser, Mr. Jordan Huizinga. He's currently the Vice President of Development at Beach Acres Parenting Center. So he's going to come in and really share some basic information as it relates to how to structure or start to build upon your fundraising practices, and how you can continue to attract dollars in a meaningful way to your organization and your initiatives. And then our last workshop, literally the day before the RFP closes, so on Thursday, February 6th, we are excited that another funder in our community, BI3, which is the philanthropic arm of TriHealth, is coming in, and they're discussing program design, delivery, and evaluation. And we'll get into it a little more further on in the presentation. But essentially, if you are awarded the opportunity to be funded by the the Boots on the Ground Fund, there is reporting required, and we would love to get a firm understanding of your impact through your work. So therefore, this workshop will help you set up your programs in a manner that you're able to capture metrics and discuss your impact outside of your organization in order to grow your work. So with that, I will now show you how to register for the workshops. So here you'll see demonstrated on the right, you go to our website, you click on the Boots on the Ground RFP, and then you can individually go in and select the workshop that is most appealing to you, and the one that you would like yourself, as well as other members of your team. So I do want to emphasize that not only yourself as perhaps the development officer or the president or CEO of your nonprofit is invited to attend, but anyone from your organization is more than welcome, including your board or other volunteers. So again, I know the video went rather quickly, but just want to emphasize our website, gcfdn.org/RFP. You will scroll to the Boots on the Ground RFP, your header that's listed, grant workshops, and you will register today. And Hannah, please correct me if I'm wrong, but you will also receive an email confirmation once your registration is completed. And again, we want to emphasize that any and all individuals associated with your organization are welcome to attend. So please, we look forward to seeing you next week, as regardless if you receive the funding or not, we want to continue to lean into smaller nonprofits in our community in a meaningful way. So with that, I will continue on the timeline. So again, I want to emphasize, I mentioned in passing that the proposal deadline is Friday, February 7th at 5 p.m. So please continue to work on your applications after today. And again, success is getting your application submitted by Friday, February 7th, again at 5 p.m. Once all applications are submitted, and to give you some perspective, in our first year, we received 136 applications. And in our second year, we received roughly 105 applications. So this is truly a very competitive process. And I'll share again, year one, we awarded 31 grants. In year two, we awarded 41 grants. So as our resources continue to grow and as we are introduced to more and more new or smaller nonprofits, we look forward to perhaps increasing the number of awards. But in the interim, I will continue to encourage you to participate in the workshops and to work diligently to meet the Friday, February 7th deadline. In February and March, my team, so Kristen, Hannah, and I, and other members of the GCF staff and the community will actually review all of the applications. So every application is given an opportunity to be read and reviewed by internal staff members as well as community volunteers. Decisions will be communicated to you all via email, the emails that are provided in the application that you submit in April. And shortly thereafter, we will actually release the funding to you or, depending on your respective situation, a fiscal sponsor. So again, today we're having the workshop in January. February is the deadline. We will review all applications in February and March. Decisions will be released in April, as well as the dollars. So these are the funding focus areas for this particular request for a proposal. So how these were decided is in partnership again with the City of Cincinnati. These are areas that we would love to drive significant change as a government as well as community partners to see a difference for all members of the community that call Cincinnati home or perhaps they are visiting. So again, homelessness prevention and access to affordable housing, access to affordable and healthy foods and being responsive to the reduction of food deserts, access to healthcare and public health, workforce development, and that could be at any stage of the career path, coupled with youth development, and that could be our smaller kids as well as up to our teenagers and young adults, youth gun violence reduction and prevention, and mental health and behavioral health, including substance use services. That's actually broken out and considered a separate category for the boots on the ground request for proposal cycle. One thing that I do want to emphasize is that in the application, you have the opportunity to select which category your particular project aligns with. So I can't emphasize that enough. You are selecting the category that your program or project aligns with, not necessarily your organization. So, for example, your organization may exist to reduce food deserts, but you're launching a summer experience for teenagers and young adults to, one, help to solve a big problem in our community, and two, to gain professional experience. So although you exist to reduce food deserts, your particular project would be workforce development because you're focusing on getting those young folks tangible professional skills, and you are paying them to do so, just as an example. And then on the actual application, you will see the opportunity to select other. I want to discourage you from doing that because essentially once you select other, myself and other members of the team, we review your application and we are still going to group you somewhere. And we batch the applications and then we consider them in a subset of one another. So we want you to be as competitive as possible when you select your category and when they're reviewed. So therefore, again, I want to encourage everyone to identify the focus area that aligns with your program or project. So with that, if you're awarded funding or as you're applying, these are what the dollars can go towards. So we support the expansion and strengthening an existing program. So we are not asking organizations to go out and create something new in order to secure these dollars. If you just want to strengthen or expand or solidify a program that you've already explored historically, we would support such an initiative. We do support launching a new program, so I do not want to discourage those who are already planning to do so, but I just want to emphasize that it is not a requirement. And then we do invest in opportunities to build organizational capacity. For example, historical projects, we invested in buying computers for staff members. We invested in training for staff members, as an example. We invested in purchasing software and things of that nature. So what will help your organization be sustainable in the long term? Those are the type of organizational investments in terms of building your capacity. Something that I perhaps would encourage you not to heavily depend on. It's historically the review panels and the decision makers have been hesitant to fund roles, full-time roles. So a time-bound internship or co-op or temporary support, that is more realistic just because being realistic, that $25,000, that is not a self-sufficient salary at this time. And so we would hate for example, you're awarded dollars this year, and if you receive dollars, you're not allowed to apply for dollars again. So how are you going to sustain that role if you are awarded dollars? So I do want to discourage you for applying for a particular role, but more so, what are other widgets or other tools or resources you can invest in to build your capacity? Something else that we do not, or other things that we do not invest in or we do not award dollars for is for campaigns, whether that's a capital campaign, whether that's a political campaign, any type of experience that would essentially mean a campaign, we do not award dollars for such initiatives. Another thing, and unfortunately for the past 2 years, we have had to decline organizations, is that we do not fund special events. So we do not fund symposiums, one-day symposiums. We do not fund block parties or grand openings or things of that nature. We are looking for programs and projects that are within a span of a year or about a year, or again, a time-bound experience. But we do not want to invest or sponsor an event, as an example, through this initiative. So I hope everybody is understanding, because it's so heartbreaking when we receive applications and we're like, oh no, we actually don't fund one-off or special events. That includes galas. Again, we do not fund such experiences through Boots on the Ground. So next, I sort of alluded to this, you have to be a 501c3 or a government agency. You have to have an operating budget of less than $1 million. And I believe I hit on it sufficiently, but it has to impact, the majority of the projects have to impact residents within the city of Cincinnati, because again, majority of the dollars are coming from the city of Cincinnati. Preference is given to organizations who demonstrate inclusion and community voice, which we will go into here a little later, and engaging leaders who are subject matter experts, and then leaders of color. So we do want to see an equity lens to the programs and initiatives that are put forth. We're also seeking, or we found that those applications that have clear measurable outcomes or SMART goals are more likely to receive funding, because we want to know, what does success look like? How do you know that you achieve the goal related to one of the 7 focus areas? And so it has to be clear. We're not going to call and follow up with individuals and ask clarifying questions for 136 applications. So I do encourage you to have someone outside of your organization or who is not too close to the work read your application to make sure that they understand it. We do not want to fund one-off initiatives. We are seeking projects and programs that are in partnership with other initiatives that are going on or other organizations to show that it's a community-wide effort. I would give examples. For example, we've received applications historically, and they had a heart towards those individuals experiencing food insecurity. And so instead of partnering with organizations in our community that were already leaning into this work and helping to amplify or drive greater traffic to those organizations who may be able to support individuals, they were creating something new and therefore creating duplicative services. We do not want to encourage duplicative services. Instead, we want to encourage collaboration, coordination, partnership, as an example. For those organizations who have some experience or some tenure under their belt, we want to see demonstration of past experience and how you've learned or grew from those experiences. So, for example, I started out in this community providing X service or programming to the youth. I found it to be a success, and so I sought out additional youth from a neighboring community because the demographics were similar, as an example. And then asset-based approach, essentially, we want to see what excites you, why you wake up every day and think about the program, project, or initiative that you are seeking to change for our community. So, and again, I'll go into this particular point in more detail, but again, I just really want to encourage people to be aspirational and not dive too strongly into the issue in terms of your word choice, your language. Like, I want to hear your dream, not the problem, to the extent that it pulls down the application. But again, I will go over that here in a moment in greater detail. So this last point, number 5, is very important. If you are among, or your organization specifically was among the 41 organizations that were awarded in calendar year 2024, you are not eligible for funding in 2025. However, if you were awarded in 2023, so amongst the 31, you now are eligible for funding in 2025. So I hope that is clear. So again, if you are a recipient for 24, you are not eligible for 25. And if there's any questions, again, Hannah and Kristen are here on the call with me, and they can field your questions in the chat. So I mentioned community voice and how does your organization involve people that you serve? And these are some of the questions that we are asking ourselves as we are reviewing your application. So literally, if you are working to serve individuals in the community of Westwood, as an example, do you have presence or do you have involvement from individuals who live in that community, who perhaps face the focus area or the experience that you're working to change for residents within the city of Cincinnati? So we want to talk about how we have a community board, or members of the community are on our board, or people with lived experience. And that goes into the second one. If you're trying to solve or lift up the work of housing insecurity, as an example, do you have someone involved in your board or on your staff who has experienced housing insecurity or who has experienced substance use, and therefore could speak from lived experience on how individuals battling that issue may perceive things, may respond, things of that nature? So we are looking truly for organizations and programs and partnerships that are doing work with the community, not for or to the community. So this is very important as we consider those who will be receiving funding from this RFP. And lastly, we do want to see how you receive feedback from your programs or projects or services as it relates to, hey, teenagers are different than when we were teenagers, as an example. So maybe flyers and pizza parties may not jive with this current population of youth. So therefore, how do you know what you're doing is working? And so we want to hear about the survey results or the focus groups that you've held and things of that nature. We just essentially want to see a proof point that what you have devised is serving the need that you hope to overcome. So with that, let's go into the SMART goals. I'm assuming that many of us on the call have heard of this terminology before, but essentially SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So again, we are going to divide the application amongst ourselves as well as a set of volunteers. And we need to understand specifically, what does success look like? What are you aiming to achieve? And that is within the short term and the long term. To clarify, if there's any ambiguity, the grant cycle is for 1 calendar year. So going back to the timeline, we will release funding in April of 2025. So therefore, your grant cycle will be April 2025 through April 2026. So shorter, you can talk about 3 months to 6 months. Long term is that 9 month to 1 year goals, as an example. Measurable, how do you know you've accomplished what you set out to do? For example, if you aim to impact 50 children and families, or if you wanted to provide meals, 500 meals over a certain period of time, things of that nature, we need to see the numbers to make it tangible and to make sure that, we're really stretching or really trying to make an impact on the goal that you set out to achieve. And then we want to make sure that, again, going back, our grant cycle is only 12 months. Can you change the world in 12 months? Maybe, maybe not. So we want to make sure that your goals are realistic for the time and the resources. $25,000 can truly move the needle in some cases, and in some cases it cannot. So that is a metric or consideration that the reviewers are making. And again, relevant. Does it align with the funding focus area that you selected? So going back to my example of trying to reduce the food deserts in our community, and you're going to launch a workforce development program for teens and young adults. So your goal should be aligned around the success you want to see for the teens in their development, although they are working on initiatives to reduce food deserts in our community. So again, make sure everything connects back to ultimately what you aim to achieve. And again, time bound, I believe I touched on it quite a bit, but we want to emphasize the grant period will be April to April. So April 25 to April 26. And with that, we do want to know how your organization is perceived by the communities you serve, right? And that goes back to working in partnership with the community and those with lived experience versus doing something to or for the community. Because if we're all working together and moving in the same direction, we will make greater impact than working in our respective silos. And then asset-based framing. And I did want to dig in deeper here as it relates to what are the strengths of the community, or what are the strengths, if you have to make it broader, of Cincinnati as an example. So is it their rich history? Is it their particular demographic? Is it because they have a large Hispanic or Latino population, as it goes back to whatever you're trying to achieve and accomplish? How this truly shows up in your application is this tone. We are not motivated or inspired to support projects or submissions that speak disparagingly about populations, whether it's their native population or another population. We want to, again, dream with you. We want to lean into your hope and the opportunity that you see that will build or lift up a community or resolve an issue. So again, think about what are the strengths, literally what assets would that particular community or that you aim to support? What do they have to bring to the table? And together you all are able to accomplish what? So I cannot emphasize enough, this truly comes through in the tone. And I encourage you again to have someone outside of your organization who is not close to the work read your application to see how it lands with him or her, because essentially that's what ourselves at the Greater Cincinnati Foundation and our community volunteers will be doing ourselves. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Hannah Hilditch to talk about literally how to apply for the RFP.
All right, thank you, Addison, and hello, everyone. To reiterate, my name is Hannah Hilditch. I'm the Community Investments Coordinator here at GCF, and I will be your go-to contact for all things related to the technical aspects of the process. So anything related to applying, your login information, you have a question about how to attach something, you need your application refreshed, excuse me. All of those questions can be directed to me at bootsontheground@gcfdn.org. And Addison, if you wouldn't mind going ahead, the next slide. So submitting our application is through a grants management software called Foundant. If you have never logged into our system before, you can create a new account for you and your organization and access the application that way. There are a couple other scenarios just to discuss. If you're an existing user of Foundant, you've been in our system before and you already have a user account, please feel free to log in like always. Again, if you have never made an account before, you can create a new one. If you are in this in-between area where you know that your organization might have an account, or you might have an account in the past, but you don't quite remember what it was, feel free to just reach out to me at bootsontheground at gcfdn.org. I can help add new staff members to your organization's account. I can refresh passwords and the like. So the only thing I caution against is if you make another organization account and you have one previously existing for your organization, it can get kind of confusing in our system. So just to avoid that, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. And if you're not sure which category you fall into on this page, feel free again to reach out to me as well. And then if you click one more Addison, it'll show you the email address. That's me. And then you can go on to the next slide. So in our system, once you've logged in, you'll see something that looks like this. And as you'll see as the video progresses, you can hit the apply button in the top left-hand corner of the applicant dashboard. And it will take you to a page that I don't see the video running. Addison, if you click on it. Oh, maybe it's just my screen. So you've probably already seen the preview. So you hit apply and then select the Boots on the Ground application, which is the first one that you'll see at the top of the screen. You can fill out the application as you've seen it scrolling through the video. There's a place to add your fiscal sponsor information if applicable, which I'll talk about more in a second. And then at the bottom, there's a place for your attachments. And I will also go over those in details in a moment as well. The number one thing to remember is to always hit apply, not preview, because preview is not the application and none of your answers will be saved there. So always remember to hit apply. And then at the very end of the application, there's a save button and a submit button. Always remember to save your application. If you want to come back and work on it more, you don't have to do it all in one sitting. And then when you are ready to roll and you're very confident in all your answers, you can go ahead and hit submit and it will send it straight to me. So yes, and there are those attachment sections and the buttons at the bottom. So if you want to go to the next slide, Addison. So there are 3 required documents that we ask you to submit along with your application. The first is your income and balance sheet. We provide a template for this. If you do not have one previously existing, you're welcome to use our template. We ask for 2 years of financial data or as up to date as possible. And then we also request your project budget as well as your board list. And again, the application deadline is Friday, February 7th. You're welcome to reach out to the Boots on the Ground email at any time if you have a question about the attachments or any of the information that we request. I just ask that you do so as soon as possible because it's a lot harder to reply the day before when everybody has questions. So to make sure that we all have enough time to respond to each other, please try and look through the application at first too, just to make sure that you readily know where all of that information exists for your organization. And if you have any questions right out of the gate. So again, feel free to email me. And then Addison, if you want to go ahead one more. I put in this slide just to address some frequently asked questions that we get about our financials. And I see that some of them already showed up in the chat as well. So I'm very happy that we have this slide. The number one question that we usually get is about the income and balance statement. Again, the purpose of the Boots on the Ground RFP is specifically for grassroots organizations, organizations that are just starting out. And a lot of times you don't have maybe 2 whole years of financial data or audited financials. In all of these cases, if you want to click Edison, the rule of thumb is that whatever information you have available most recently will be accepted. So in the case that like your budget isn't finalized until March of this year, or you don't have income because you operate on in-kind donations, all of those questions are please provide whatever financial information you have readily available, not readily available, as recently available. And there is a note section in the template provided where you can always add more context. So if you want to just call out some discrepancies that you might perceive we see in your financial data, please feel free to clarify further in the notes section. We read through them very carefully. The second question that we often receive is if you're a local branch of a national nonprofit and your local branch does not have an operating budget of $1 million, but your national organization does, can you still apply? The answer is yes. So if your local branch of this nonprofit is operating at less than $1 million, we welcome you to apply. And then the last question is, what is the difference between operational expenses and salaries? So in our template, we break these two out, and sometimes it confuses people. So just to clarify, salaries are the dollars that your organization pays to individuals in compensation for their work. Operational expenses are all of the other things that keep your organization running, such as rent, utilities, equipment, all of the keeping the lights on expenses. All right, and then for my last slide, I have to go over the fiscal agent information. So you'll see that this is a question in the application. Are you working with a fiscal agent? So a fiscal agent, as you can see in the quote, is a nonprofit organization that provides fiduciary oversight, financial management, and other administrative services to help build the capacity of a charitable project. Next slide. And what that means is that if your organization does not have 501c3 status, a charitable tax exempt status, then you may submit an application for this RFP if you are partnering with a fiscal agent. And that fiscal agent will accept the funds and provide financial oversight for your organization for the charitable project that you're working on. So you don't necessarily need to be a nonprofit in order to apply, but you do need to partner with one if you're submitting a charitable project for consideration for this RFP. So when you apply with a fiscal agent, you do have a couple extra steps, which you'll see in the application. We ask for the name of that fiscal agent, their EIN number, the main contact of the staff member that works at your fiscal agent's organization. And we also ask for the income and balance sheet or audited financials for 2 years of your fiscal sponsor, fiscal agent organization. Just to clarify, you cannot be your own fiscal agent because you already are. So if you're at that section in the application and you find yourself writing in your own organization's information for the fiscal agent, that's not required. So it's only if you're partnering with an organization outside of yourself to serve as your fiscal agent. Okay, and with that, I think I'm going to send it back to Addison to go over the last part of the process.
Thank you so much, Hannah. So now, what if you are awarded funding from the Boots on the Ground? program. So essentially, again, it doesn't have to be up to $25,000, but say you get 10,000, 15,000, everyone who receives funding will be required to do follow-up reporting. And these are in 6 month and 1 year increments. So in October 2025, you will receive a form through the Fountain application system that we just want to know your basic learnings. If you had to pivot in any way, why, like just tell us what's going on. We will also at this time be interested in basic numbers, how many individuals or units of whatever you're serving, how many did you serve, coupled with dollars leveraged. And what we mean by that is if we gave you $25,000 and you were able to therefore reach out to other organizations and say, hey, I have $25,000. Can you match my 25,000 to make it 50,000 so I can make an even greater impact and so on and so forth? We want to know that if you were able to, again, leverage these dollars to get other entities interested in investing in your project plan or program. And then lastly, or excuse me, let me go back to the 6 month, for example. We would actually meet with every grantee. This will be a virtual conversation, about 15 to 20 minutes again, to go over what has been submitted to see if there's anything that we can do to help from a capacity building standpoint and make sure that everything is on track and okay. At the final follow-up standpoint, again, which will be due April 2026, that's when we would want specific project measures that align specifically with those SMART goals that you submitted. We really want to know, so what did success look like? Were you successful? And if you were not, why, how, as an example. And that's a great opportunity for you to share anecdotal information, any storytelling. We love pictures. And we just really want to know, how did it go? And what is your next step? And what is your dream? And is your project initiative sustainable? So that is a written report, again, through the Foundant system. But if it's warranted, we then would follow up and have phone calls or conversation. But primarily, the majority of recipients will only have to submit that online electronic report. And lastly, a few tips and tricks. Please use the FAQs that were given, for example, in this presentation as your primary guide. And again, the application, the electronic Foundant application is the primary means of expressing your work. And what we mean by that, folks, including ourselves, we read these applications all times of day and night. And so if I'm reading an application at midnight, I'm not going to email you or pick up the phone to ask a clarifying question. And going back to the sheer volume, again, year one, we received 135 applications. Year two, we received 105 applications. And we do not have the capacity to reach out to all applicants to help them strengthen their application to gain further information. So once it's submitted, if everything is correct and there's no outstanding forms, then what you submitted is what we will review. Please make sure that you have all required materials. If you don't have all your required materials, it will not move on to the review stage of the process. After you submit your application, it is much more difficult to make changes. So as we've both suggested, Hannah and I, please start in your application now versus later and ask questions sooner rather than later, because on February 6th, we will get so many questions that it's impossible to truly answer them all. And we do welcome the opportunity to participate in meetings, learning, special events, things of that nature to learn more about your organization. So please keep us posted. And again, sooner rather than later as it relates to getting in contact with us if there's any questions. So this is our last slide here, and want to invite people, if necessary, to come off mute if your question hasn't been answered. And if something comes up after we hang up from this conversation, please feel free to reach out again to bootsuntheground@gcfdn.org. A member of the GCF staff will reach out and respond to your question. And this presentation will be posted on the website. If there is others from your organization or that you are aware of who wanted to participate in the call but did not have the opportunity to do so. So with that, I'm happy to invite you to come off mute and ask any questions that, again, have not been answered thus far.
Edison, there was a couple questions in the chat earlier that were revolving around the special events topic that you touched on.
Okay.
I believe one asked about a health fair, if that would be considered a special event, and someone else asked about if they had like a 12-month, like 12 series program, would that be considered a special event?
Thank you for that question, Hannah, and whomever put it in the chat. So the 12-part series, as an example, is not considered a special event, but the health fair, the one-time engagement at a particular date and time for a number of hours, that would be considered a special event. So I would encourage organizations to lean more so into the series format for their programming versus a one-day, one-time. Amy, I see that you have a question. Oh, you don't have a question? Okay, saw you come off mute. I'm sorry. Any other questions, Hannah, that I should address for the broader group? Megan, you have a question?
Yes, I have two, I think might be quick, or one of them might be. One question is what can funds be used for question. I was curious about, I do understand the difference between salary and operational expenses, but I was curious about, is there any percentage that's allowed to go to administering the work? A certain percent goes to administration for the grant. So I know sometimes grants will offer a small percentage of funding specifically for that. That's one question. And another was when we're looking at the equity lens, I'm just wanting to make sure we're covering all of our bases, but the phrase engaging leaders of color, I was curious if you guys could define leader, like what that means to you guys.
So the first question is yes, you can allocate a percentage of the grant to administering the program, right? So we understand EDs and others throughout the organization, even program coordinators, for example, this grant can contribute to their salary, but if you said, I wanted to hire a development officer just from this grant, that's when we get weary and shy away from supporting. In regards to your leaders of color engaging into the I do not know why I'm losing my train of thought, so I apologize, Megan. But in regards to defining leaders, literally it's anyone who's a part of the decision making. So for example, if it is a volunteer coordinator or a lead, someone who's helping drive the direction of the organization and or the project or program. So they don't have to have the CEO title, they don't have to have an executive or a manager title. It's just someone who does influence how the work is done.
Thanks, Addison. We had another question, a couple related to the budget template. Is it necessary to use the template we provide on the application, or is it possible to use your own?
You are more than welcome to use your own template. We do ask that it's in a PDF format, and Hannah, keep me honest, it is one particular format that folks have submitted historically that literally we can't open or we can't see. Do you recall which format that was?
Yes, those are numbers files. So the Apple specific, like Excel version, basically, those ones we can't open. So a PDF and Excel, is perfectly acceptable.
Yes, so we just provide the template as a guide, but please make sure that the items that are requested in the template are reflected in the format you choose to submit. And one thing I would say explicitly that we've had past experience with, folks have submitted their bank statements or their checking account balances and things. Those items are not acceptable.
All right. And then one last question was, we've got a couple location-based questions. So if a nonprofit is not located in Cincinnati, but their work directly impacts the residents here, are they still eligible to apply?
Yes, those organizations are eligible to apply. And one thing I will say, for example, if your organization is located in northern Cincinnati, so not Cincinnati proper, but in the greater Cincinnati region, right? And you want to infuse or impact youth in the Springdale area, we will consider grants such as that, but the funding available to go to such projects is so much smaller than the funding available to go to city dollars. We cannot spend city dollars outside of the city of Cincinnati. So to be most competitive for this grant opportunity, your project should center on residents in the city. But you are not disqualified if you are impacting, for example, north of the city or south of the city, as an example. Thank you, Hannah. Any other questions come up? Oh, Amy, you have a question?
I actually did come up with one. Our project, we intend for it to operate within primarily the neighborhood of Westwood, but we have not yet determined which of a number of possible organizations we would like to be our fiscal sponsor. One of those is an organization that's located in Mount Healthy, but does a lot of work, has leaders come and does some training and is involved here in this. Would that be a ding against us if the fiscal agent is not in Cincinnati?
Not at all. Not at all. To be candid, even if your fiscal agent was not in the state of Ohio, because right, you're the ones executing the work. We are evaluating where your address is and the community which you seek to serve. So thank you for that question, Amy. Yes, your fiscal agent is not considered in the review of your application, nor if you're using a fiscal agent. We don't want people to try to scramble and get their 501c3 before February 7th. One, we know it takes a lot more time, but two, please do not assume that if you are using a fiscal agent that will be held against you. It will not. Thank you.
Hi, Addison. This is Tarita from Avondale.
Yes.
Question. So you have on here access to affordable, healthy foods. Does that have to be like a system, like entrenched in only allowing access to healthy foods, or can it be any kind of access to healthy foods, if that makes sense?
Okay, yes, I'm not following the question. Can you?
So, um, so like a food truck doesn't necessarily it's not necessarily a part of a system, but they do pass out food, healthy food. So that's
Yes.
allowable.
Yes, the most important part of that is that it's like fruits, vegetables, produce, not much of the same fast food, chips, junk food
Okay.
as an example. So yes, yes.
Okay. All righty.
Mhm. And then I saw a few other hands. Amy, did you have another question?
I did, but I forgot it.
Okay, all right. And then Rose, I see your hand is up.
Um, sorry, my name is Fatu. I had to use Rose link because I could not find my link. I am the founder of the Kentucky African Women Association, a nonprofit that we help a lot of people from Cincinnati, and this project can be done. But we started a project with mental health, been doing a lot of stuff. Can we use this money to finish that project? Because one of the things we're missing is enough money to send to some people who need it to get help.
Yes, based on what you've just described, it's the funding focus of mental and behavioral health, including substance use. That's one of the focus areas. So again, based on the limited information you just provided, it would be eligible.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Hannah, did any other questions come up in the chat? Oh, you're on mute, Hannah.
Excuse me, sorry. One more clarifying question about Northern Kentucky. Are Northern Kentucky applicants eligible to apply?
You are more than welcome to apply, but again, it will be very competitive for you because of the resources that are beyond what the city has contributed. So, yes, you're more than welcome. It will be reviewed, it will be considered, but you will have a harder chance of being selected. So, submit a perfect application.
And Addison, I don't think this has been addressed, but I feel like it's a common question in other RFPs that we serve here at GCF. This mindset of only applying once, correct? And maybe really talking about your other kind of nonprofit community members, making sure you guys aren't applying for the same program or support. And can you kind of spell that out a little bit more?
Okay, if I'm understanding what you're saying, submit one application for a unique project for boots on the ground. So is that what you're saying, or?
Yeah, it definitely that. I think it's layered. Sorry for not the unintentional layeredness, but each organization can only apply once.
Yes,
And then that program, if you are partnering with another nonprofit, you guys can't both apply for the same program.
you are correct. So for example, if Kristen has a kittens and puppy nonprofit, and then I have a mental health nonprofit, and we say, hey, we're going to partner together, and then for whatever reason, I don't communicate to Kristen, Kristen doesn't communicate to me, or if we think that we would be more competitive, either I or Kristen can apply. We both cannot apply. And say, I decide to apply on our behalf. Kristen cannot then turn around and apply for another project for her organization. All right. Any other final questions as we're on the hour and I want to be respectful of everybody's time? All right. So with that, thank you so very much. Again, we are here at the Greater Cincinnati Foundation as a resource for you. Please email bootsontheground@gcfdn.org. And we look forward to seeing all of you and more at our capacity building workshop next Thursday, January, I think it's the 30th at 1 o'clock here at GCF. So again, thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful day.